Hi, this is Gwen. Welcome back to my channel. I hope you enjoyed this video. I have another Easter Bunny decor idea for you using mostly Dollar Tree supplies. Please let me know what you think down in the comments below. And if you haven't already, I would hope that you would consider subscribing and becoming a part of my crafty community. I will be using this canvas panel that came from the Crafter Square from Dollar Tree, as well as one of their bunny wood cutouts, and taking this color Apothecary by DIY Paint and giving this canvas panel a good coat, speeding up the drying process using my heat gun. Next, I will be using plaster chalk paint by Waverly and giving this a nice coat over the whole entire piece. And this will allow the paper or the napkin that I'll be using to decoupage to pop out a little bit more. So as I mentioned, I will be using a napkin, which I got from either Marshalls or TJ Maxx sometime last year, in this really pretty spring floral pattern with some bunnies on it. And I just used some Mod Podge and brushed that over the entire wood piece. And you want to be gentle with the napkin since it can tear pretty easily if you rub it in a little bit too much or too harshly. So I'm just using my fingertips to make sure that the napkin is adhering well to that wood piece. And once a napkin was adhered to that wood decor piece, I used a nail file to just file off the excess napkin using a downward motion. You'll want to make sure that you are going one direction, going downwards, so as to avoid peeling off any of the napkin or tearing it. You'll want to get in between all those crevices, in between all the tight corners, just making sure that you have a nice clean finish. Next, I took some more of that Mod Podge and just gave this a good top coat to provide some protective layer. I took a razor blade and just cut off the middle sections of the bunny's ears. Since I did want to do something different with those areas, possibly add an accent color, which I did end up eventually painting the Apothecary paint in the same color as the canvas panel. But at the end, you'll see that I ended up doing something different. In the meantime, I did go ahead and file down any of the excess napkins that were sticking out from the ears as well as from the tail. I did the exact same thing. Now I wanted to frame out this canvas panel. I felt like it needed some sort of border, and I went back and forth with different ideas in mind, but eventually I decided on using some clothespins. I already had this in my craft stash, so I went ahead and made use of it. But before I get to the framing part, I went ahead and added a background to the bunny using IOD's Kindest Regards stamp. Before I stamped it, I went ahead and sanded it just slightly. And using some of this Distress ink by Tim Holtz, I just went ahead and inked up the stamp. And I didn't want the whole entire piece to have this background writing. I just wanted it to be on one side of the panel. So I just went ahead and chose parts of the wording that I wanted to use and to stamp onto the background. And I just continued to stamp until I was happy with the way it looked. I didn't want the entire piece to be stamped with this writing because the bunny already had a very graphic, very busy type of design on it. And I felt like it would just sort of compete with the background writing of that stamp if I did the whole entire piece. So I just wanted to give it a little accent, a little bit of that French country flair, and just by adding it to the right side, I thought it was sufficient enough. So back to the ears and the tail of this bunny, I decided on using some moss. So if you decide to use moss for these areas, then obviously you can skip over painting these areas. You could just save yourself some time and some trouble with painting if you are going to eventually cover it like I did. But again, this was sort of, in hindsight, something last minute that I decided to do. So going into this DIY, I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to cover those areas with, whether it was with a different scrapbook paper, something that maybe coordinated with the napkin, or just painting it. But eventually I went with moss because I love the look of moss. It's very springy to me. Now we're on to framing out this canvas panel. So as I mentioned, I decided to use clothespins. I took the clothespin apart, removing that little metal part that holds the two pieces together, and just laying it out in a fashion that was good to me. I went ahead and just hot glued the pieces, framing out this entire canvas panel. And this worked out perfectly. It was just the right amount of width that I needed for this so that it didn't obstruct any of the design or any of the parts of the bunny that was in the center. The other idea I had was possibly using stir sticks, but it's a little too wide and too thick, and I didn't have much leeway up around this bunny, since the bunny pretty much took up the majority of the space in the center. But this worked out well, so I would definitely give this a try if you are wanting to frame something out. You could also stain the clothespins, but I like the natural look of the wood, so I left it as is, and I felt it coordinated well with the bunny since everything was on the lighter side. Then taking some TiTebond glue and hot glue, I went ahead and glued that bunny down to the canvas panel, just making sure that it was flush to the bottom part of the frame, and making sure I had good adhesion in all points of this bunny. Like the ears kept popping up and wasn't laying flat and flush against the panel, so I did have to put a little more pressure in those areas. Then to accentuate this piece, I used some of this ribbon. It's like a farmhousey type ribbon that came from DollarTree, and just made a simple shoestring bow using a piece of jute twine, just knotting it in the middle and hot gluing that to the bunny's neck. I went ahead and dovetailed the edges as well. And I did want to add something else to this bow, and I went ahead with using a bead that came on a napkin ring, which I've had for many years, and it also had these leaves on it. It had a slight bit of glitter in the leaves, which I didn't mind at all. It's very subtle, and the leaves are more of an off-white cream color, which again coordinated well with this bunny and the overall look. So here I'm just trying to decide on the placement and how and if I was going to use those pieces of leaves. I do eventually use it, but I went ahead and just glued down the bead first, the center point or the focal point, and then glued the leaves one opposite each other. And I felt like that was a nice touch to that bow, giving it a little bit of sparkle and contrast. Now it was time to create a hanger. So using the same farmhouse type of ribbon, I decided that I was going to repurpose this hanger. So I knew I wanted this picture to sort of dangle from this hanger. Using some of this ribbon, I just made sure that I cut 2 pieces that were of equal lengths. And here I'm just trying to gauge the distance and the height that I wanted the ribbon to be, making sure that it was lined up straight and even with the other side. So I just took some hot glue. This canvas panel is very lightweight, so I wasn't worried that the glue was going to come off or anything like that. So I proceeded to glue the pieces of ribbon down, making sure that I adhered it to the canvas panel rather than the piece of clothespin. And then I'm just sort of creasing and tucking it in to those edges using my nail, just to make sure I had good adhesion, because I wanted to be sure that this didn't come apart or come undone. So I'm going to repeat the same steps to the opposite side as well as to the back side. And then to give this hanger a more polished and cohesive look to the rest of the project, I took some jute string and just wound it around that little hanging piece just to finish off the look. I didn't like the look of that metal exposed, so I wanted it to have more of that French country or French farmhouse look. So adding that jute twine around the little hanger definitely finished off the project and made everything look a little more cohesive. And I am very proud of how this came out. This was pleasantly surprising to me. I was just not really sure which direction I was going with this project, but ultimately I was super pleased. Tell me what you think in the comments down below. I would love to hear your feedback. I hope you enjoyed watching me make this really cute bunny French farmhouse hanging sign. I love the outcome of it. It fits my aesthetic for sure. It has a very spring-like feel. You could even leave it up past beyond Easter, in my opinion, even throughout the year. I think it's adorable. I hope you enjoyed this one. Leave me a thumbs up if you did and comment down below, and I hope to see you back in my next one. Take care. Thanks for watching.